And I'm like, first and foremost, they are not Cubans. They are Cuban trained.
We're Cuban
South
trained.
African doctors. Okay, hi guys, welcome back to my channel. I'm Anne and this is the Health Hub. So because a lot of people are asking me questions about like Cuba and the whole system, how to get in, about how the whole process works, I asked a colleague of mine, Dr. Yola Welcome to the Health Hub. Do introduce yourself.
Okay, thank you for having me. My name is Yola, Dr. Yola Khokhwana, but obviously I trained in Cuba a while back, and now I'm currently at Frontier Hospital doing my first year community service.
So I don't know people are asking. I wanted you to take me through the whole process of how did you actually go about applying to actually get to Cuba? Because you know a lot of South African doctors are taken every year to Cuba to study medicine and then they come back. So I just want you to take me through just briefly on when do they, how did you apply, how did you get taken, and the whole process, how it was.
Okay, so the application process for me was in 2012. So what happens is across the country, in all the provinces except for the Western Cape, in each district of each province, they have these bursaries. So I was let know by a friend who knows somebody, whatever. But basically, it's the district. What do you call it?
The Department of Health.
Department of Health, district level. They are usually the ones that are responsible for giving out these bursaries. So then I got an application from there, and then I applied. So prior to 2012, they were taking plus minus 100 students to Cuba, right? But then from 2012, they decided to expand the program. They called it an extended program. So now the government's goal was to train in a space of 6 years or 5 years to train about 6,000 doctors. So the process is you get the application from the district Department of Health, and then they do make a selection, and then after the selection process, then you are called for an interview. So basically, an interview is to explain why exactly you want to go there, and what difference are you going to make? Because if they're not choosing person B, why should they choose you? So essentially, the aim of it all is to try and provide health services to the impoverished communities.
Okay.
So basically, the whole idea of it is that we go to train in Cuba and then we come back to serve the very same communities.
In the rural
yes,
areas.
because most of the time, people when they start working, they be on.
They want to work in
I want
Joburg.
to work in Joburg, I want to work in Cape Town,
Yeah.
and then the poor communities then are at a loss. So basically, the entire program is basically aimed at that.
Let's just go back to the application. Because when did you graduate? I mean, finish matric?
2011.
2011.
Yes.
So you didn't apply for medical schools in South Africa?
I did. I applied to one. I don't know why. I applied to one, and everything was going well. We're communicating back and forth with the university.
Which one?
UCT.
Oh, okay.
We're coming back and forth. They're saying I should do this, this documents. Everything was going so well, and I think it was right before the exams, the final exams, and then they're on some. Was it before the final exams? Yes. And then they're on some. We regret to inform you that.
Huh?
And I was like.
Before the actual matric result. How are they regretting? That's
And I was
rude.
like, okay, that's strange. But now it was bad because I didn't apply elsewhere. Because the thing is that it was the first place I applied to, and they responded. So I was like, oh, I'm done.
Oh,
Why else should I? Like, why should I bother? And then so that was 2011, and then obviously finished my matric then, and in 2012, I had applied at Rhodes University for a BSc. Why did I apply? Oh, because they came to school. So. But essentially,
And then what happened in 2012?
And then in 2012, there was a friend of a friend that was in Rhodes University that said they'd not advise me to accept the place I got at Rhodes University because of A, B, and C. And I was like, oh, okay. But I had no plan. I was like, I'm not taking it. They say I must not take it. And then I think I didn't think it through because I think it was around December. It was the time when I was supposed to accept it. And then I was like, no, I'm not accepting it. And then came January. January was the results and everything. February, now I'm like, okay, so the city rejected me. I rejected roads. I have nowhere to go. And then essentially I was like, okay, no, it means then I need to work for next year then. Then I need to apply for next year, which would have been now 2013, because it's already around February and I wanted to do medicine. And then I was like, okay, fine, then I'm going to start, I'm going to give myself time essentially to actually go through the different universities, see what their requirements are and what I'm supposed to do and everything, just so that, you know, I'm kind of in it, involved in it, right? And then in the beginning of the year, then I got a call from a friend who, I think the mother works in the Department of Health, and then I was like, I once heard you talking about Cuba. Apparently I talked about it. I think I saw an article, and then we were learners. I talked about it. I was like, I'd really like to go to Cuba, and she was like, there's diversities to apply for Cuba, and I was like, oh, let me do that. According to that first selection of 100 across South Africa, I had lost the thing because my application was late, so they had already kind of made the selection, so I was late, but luckily then they decided to start the extended program in 2012.
And then
so
they took more.
Yes, so that's how then I got to,
So which month of the year do they actually take you?
Okay, so different from South Africa, their academic year starts in September. Right?
Okay.
So that's why the entire application thing is usually earlier on the year. So basically you're supposed to go there around August, and then so that you can be able to start
in September.
Right? But there are other people other countries, they take their students earlier prior to that, because I mean, it's a different environment, and more than anything, it's a different language.
So my issue with the applications, right? Because personally, I didn't care for Cuba. Like I didn't care. I just wanted to do medicine. So I didn't know anything about anything. The only way I knew that one could study medicine without having to actually pay for it, because it's actually really expensive, especially like in universities, is via the Cuban system that you have to apply to go to Cuba. So when I finished the trip in 2011 also, and then I was told that also when I went to the department, I asked for the forms for Cuba. And that was in 2011, maybe around like September.
Okay.
And then I was told that I won't qualify. I don't know why. They told me that they take very impoverished people to Cuba. I was also told that they go to your house to make, like, I don't know if it's just like Krishnani district. They said that they go to your house to see the situation at your house. Do you live in a shack? Like they take like the impoverished, and like the middle class people. If your mom is working, you don't like. I'm not talking about rich people because I wasn't rich, but my mom's a teacher. So they're like, if you like your parents are working, you stay in a house, you won't get it. So they told me not to apply for it, and that I wouldn't qualify for it, and that I must apply for the South African one. So that's how I ended up getting the application forms to study in South Africa, basically. So that one I managed to get. The department gave me the forms for the South African, the Department of Health bursary to study in South Africa, in South African University. So I don't know how true that is. Like I honestly.
Well,
I don't know.
I'll be lying.
Did they go have a tour at your house? So they're lying. Maybe they helped me. I don't know.
I don't know. I'm gonna say maybe when they were really strict on the number, the 100. I think then it was strictly.
Because I went in 2011, and you're saying that thing is started only 2012. Sure, because I heard, that's what I heard, that they go to your house.
Well, I guess it's a good thing that I didn't apply in 2011.
You wouldn't have gotten it. You wouldn't have gotten it. Like they say that they take like impoverished people.
Yeah.
Like they look at marks, yes, but they also look at, but they don't look at like marks. Like they'll take like 70s, like late 60% and stuff like that. But they don't, like they won't give it to you if you have a house. Like if you have an actual house, if your parents are working.
Cool.
It was intense. Like they took people who, and apparently I heard that the reason why they do that is because of the conditions in Cuba, that people who come from homes that like people are like who have soft life kids. Soft life kids don't survive.
Don't do well.
They end up like quitting, and they give them problems. They complain a lot.
Trust.
So how the living conditions?
So obviously during the entire application process, the interviews, so they sold us this, that you know what, you are going to go to the most, I don't know, you're going to a farm, not even a farm, you're
Sure.
going somewhere where there's
It's rough.
nothing rough, like rough is even an understatement, you know. So mentally, you know, you think you're preparing yourself for that. Because at the end of the day, you want to go study. At the end of the day, like reality is that you want to go study, and then you're like, it's rural. It's you're not gonna get your McDonald's, you know, things like that, and you're like, I think I can make it work, you know, because I mean,
You want it.
you want it. So we get there. Okay, fine. So our program was kind of really different from the others, but different, but somehow the same, right? The large number were placed in Havana, the capital.
Oh,
of
that's
Cuba,
nice.
right? So the program prior to ours was in the other provinces, not the capital province,
okay.
right? So they were more in the rural, if you can put it that way. But I'm saying it's the capital. It's not something like Johannesburg. It's different. It's definitely different. It's definitely different because it's a socialist country. It's a country that basically is surviving on fending for itself. The entire idea of getting people from impoverished backgrounds is basically somebody who's not going to get too much of a cultural shock. But culture is way more than an economic class. Okay, there's cultural shock, you know. So yeah, so essentially, I think that's the whole idea behind it being an impoverished program for the impoverished. But more than anything, I think more than going to Cuba, it's about coming back, because at the end of the day, South Africa needs to benefit.
Yeah.
You understand? Because I mean, they're going to be paying for this
student.
education, exactly. So at the end of the day, the department needs to benefit. So it's better to actually get somebody who's from this community that is impoverished, that knows how difficult it is to acquire services, this and that, and then so that when they come back, they actually want to work for their own people. Because at the end of the day, you are from a middle class, you're from the upper class, and then you go study medicine, and then you're expected to come in the rural areas. How are you going to live?
Yeah. So you arrived there, and then I heard that you studied your medicine in
Spanish.
Spanish, yeah.
So we arrived there, so the program is set in the way that you arrive there and then you first get introduced to the language. So you have to do the language first. So you do language, and basically some of the subjects you did in high school, your physical sciences.
In Spanish?
In Spanish.
Oh,
so it's
gosh.
basically, because you're gonna learn medicine in Spanish.
But first of all, I can't even speak half of South African languages to begin with, let alone
How are
Spanish.
you going to know Spanish? You're from South Africa.
Imagine, you never even heard of it, you don't
But
even
look,
know.
But look, it sounds impossible. It sounds, I don't know, it sounds very, I don't know, but it's possible.
So you studied that for how long?
Okay, so the program is meant to be, I think, like 3 months, 6 months, no, it's supposed to be 6 months. You learn the language,
The
basically.
language,
But obviously you're not going to learn just the language. You're going to learn your chemistry in Spanish. You're going
Your
to learn
bio.
yes, you know, such things in Spanish, so as to familiarize yourself with basically formal language. Because I mean, the other language you're going to learn in terms of basic communication, right? Because you're going to be in this country, and you're going to, more than anything, you're going to learn about medicine, and then you're going to interact with the community itself. So you need to be able to basically communicate and interact with them. So 6 months of the language, and then it's 6 months of pre-med, right?
So pre-med is what, physics, bio,
Yes,
chemistry?
biochemistry, but hey, there's, okay, it's in Spanish, there's a subject called morphophysiology. So basically morpho is, it's a mixture of biochemistry, there's physiology, your anatomy, yes, you get it in morpho, yes, yeah. So, but it's spaced, I don't know how to explain it, right? So the first 2 years, obviously those are the preclinical years, so that's where you'll be doing your anatomy, your pathology, and everything. And then in third year now, that's when you start doing clinical internal medicine. So the first frustration was the language, right? Okay, it's fine when we're together as the students. I mean, we're from South Africa, but also even that, we're from different parts of South Africa.
With
You are
different
somebody-
languages.
Exactly, you are somebody who's taken from the rural of the Eastern Cape, was as close as Sodwa. And then there's somebody who's taken from the rural of Limpopo, Chivenda. how are those two people going to communicate? But luckily, because in South Africa, English is standard, so we can kind of, there's not
Come
really
together.
much, yes. But now we come together, and then there's this one who's now speaking Spanish. And the thing is that everything we need to do, we need to know, is from these people that we don't understand what they're saying. They don't understand what we're saying. It was really strange. How does the country not know English? It did not make sense. It did not make sense at all.
It doesn't.
But it makes sense now. Like, I mean, it's colonizers, hey?
Yeah.
The English didn't get to Cuba. So medicine itself, it was hard. I'm not gonna lie. It was hard because remember, this is a science, right? But also it's a different science. It's medical sciences. You know, it's a science on its own. It has a language of its own. But now I'm learning it in another language. That is, I'm not saying that English would have been better, but I mean, I went to school with English, you know, so I'm familiar with. But now, I'm still struggling to communicate with the Spanish because, you know, Spanish is difficult. It's a lot. Like the literature in Spanish is a lot. Is a lot. So most of the time, when we started, we obviously were not speaking the proper Spanish. We had grammatical errors. Like they'd laugh at us. But the nice thing is that Cubans are actually very nice. Okay, the people that were teaching us, you know, I think they're used to it. But
the actual work was it difficult? Because you went to Wits after, so at least now you have a bit of an overview of the things that you actually did there. Did it prepare you well enough for you to come back to South Africa?
I think so.
To do a bit of, like, what's it, 18 months in a South African university?
No, definitely.
Prepared you?
Yes. I'd even go to an extent of saying it was a whole lot more. Like, I feel like our scope was was immense. Like, there was a lot. There was a lot we learned. And then obviously when we come here, we only have 18 months. So really we can't be saying now we're going to be comparing the two ways of thingy. But it was a lot, man. Besides the language itself, but it was long.
Could you fail as a person? Like, was it
Yes.
Was it that bad?
Yes.
Did they kick you out? Did they give you 10 chances?
They give you not 10 chances. They give you 3 chances. And they kick you out.
At Wits you get 1.
Yeah. No. But I mean, I guess it makes sense because maybe
They think, okay, it was the language. Okay,
maybe it kicked me, yes, because of the language.
Okay, so let's start over.
Let's try again. And then
yeah.
one last time now, and again, it's the actual
now
thing,
you're the problem.
Exactly.
No, shame. No, I did hear that. It was actually, like, at least they give you a lot of chances.
No, they did. They did. But I mean, it's 3 chances in the first.
No, but were there people who were, like, who failed the 3rd time around? Do they send you back? Like,
Yes.
what is that? What happens if you actually, like, fail?
So, you get those chances, right? And then I think you repeat. You can fail the course, right? But then there's a limited amount of courses that you can fail.
In a year?
In a year.
Okay.
Yes. I think there's a limited amount that you fail. And then, but obviously if you're going to keep failing, I mean...
Then they're going to chase you away.
Or they'll send you back.
Or send you back.
Chase you away.
They'll send you back on a plane. You'll catch a plane back.
You know, they will send you back. But most of the time, I think they understand it. Like it's a whole different environment, the language itself. So that I think that's also why probably they give you more chances.
Let's talk about the life. I mean, not even the life actually. The res. Do you stay in like a resident type area? Do you stay with other kids from other countries?
Yeah.
Do you get money, pocket money? How's the food?
Okay, so when we first got there, we were living at a residence, right? I've never been to boarding school, but I imagine that's what boarding school is like. So it's basically dormitories. Yes.
Like 10 beds, 1 room?
Yes.
Dang.
Yes. So then comes the middle class, you understand? So I think it's the things that they looked at.
Because they said that middle class people complain.
Exactly.
Because we're not taking you.
If
You're going to want
you-
to come back, so you're wasting a space for a child who's going to see that situation as something that's tolerable.
You know? And also probably they taking people that aren't going to complain.
Yeah, they don't want to complain.
Because they're like, you need this, blah, 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 you understand? It's good and it's bad at the same time because, I mean, they kind of preparing ground to to step on your head.
Because
If you can put
dorms
it
are
that
like for high school kids, man. Like
I'm telling you.
dorms are not for like a 19, 20, 23-year-old.
Hey?
Mm.
So the entire life in Cuba, it's
In those dorms?
dormitories.
Like
Yes.
one bathroom and everything.
Yes, so it's usually like 3 floors.
Mm.
It's a building with 3 floors. So obviously the bathrooms are for each floor.
Mm.
So it's mostly showers.
Mm.
So I think on a floor there'd be like 5 or 6 if I'm not lying,
Mm.
showers and toilets.
Mm.
Right, so the people on the floor there are going to use that. So the dormitories themselves, they're different. Some have 8 people, some have 12,
Oh, damn.
12 or 10. Yeah. So yeah, it's a lot.
Don't people steal your clothes and like take your food and well,
Well-
there's nothing really because you're eating at Reds anyways,
Yes,
so it's not an issue.
because food, it was prohibited to cook, essentially.
So you have to eat what's being cooked by the people there.
Yes. So basically, you have to eat their food, essentially.
And how's their food?
I mean, hey, yeah, it's not the greatest.
But you can bring aromat, like put it in your suitcase.
Yeah, yes, but obviously the first year you have no idea.
Yeah, the first year you probably like
Um,
go there blind.
Yeah,
You don't know what to
and
bring.
the food smells different. It looks different. It tastes different. So in the beginning, everything is just it's not nice. You know, it's not that eventually it gets nice and you get used to it. But I mean, everything it's just a shock all the time. I remember when we first got there. Obviously, we got there late, so got there. It was already dinner time. Most of us didn't eat
It was gross.
because the smell. We were like, what is this?
What do they eat, man? Like,
But they eat food. Like in a sense, like
I mean, like, isn't rice rice?
rice is rice. But I mean, how you prepare it.
Rice you just pour water, like.
No, definitely. But I mean, you don't eat rice alone. So the seasoning there is definitely different from here. So that was the problem. That for them it was they cooked. They did the things. But you just it's strange things like the scent. It's very different. So it was a matter of we didn't want to eat the first time, but then eventually, I don't know, we got used to it. Yeah. And
So you never cooked the whole, like the entire time?
I didn't, but people did. But I mean, it was
How?
prohibited.
Like by stove?
Yeah, they buy a stove. But most of the time, they have to cook without the. I'm gonna say nations now. But yes, without them knowing.
Oh,
Yeah.
were you allowed to date some of the Cuban people or each
Allowed.
other?
Loud. That's such a. I don't know.
They didn't care for dating people, whether you date. They weren't bothered.
No.
So you could date whoever.
Yes.
You can date
Yes.
someone from Cuba. You can date
Yes.
some of the people that you're going to school with.
Yes.
But the only issue was if you fall pregnant.
Yes. I mean, you're there to study. You're there to study, so I mean,
But do they offer
there's something.
contraception? Like, do they have such services like available, or they like
Yes.
judge you like, hey, you're here to study? Why you asking?
No,
for
definitely
contraception?
there are. Even for us, when going there,
Mm.
part of the medicals that we do.
They test you.
Yes.
I will. So if you are
Rumors
positive,
was-
then what's gonna happen?
Rumors are, if you are, you don't go there.
Because there's a lot of like now, because you know there was the PMTCT whole thing. Like a lot of teenagers and a lot of 20-year-olds who got it from their parents in the early 2000s have survived because of ARVs. Thank God. So you're saying if a person got it via that route, okay, you can't. There's no way of telling, obviously. But
Yes.
obviously, they're gonna tell you that.
Because at that time you're applying for scholarship. You're
hey,
18,
like
19.
why are they gonna test you? Why
No, but you're 18, 19.
Yeah,
so
you're
we're
18,
not
19.
going to think that it was.
from maybe sexual?
No, we're not going to
acquisition.
think it was from your mother. You're 18.
I know.
But you are 18.
But now a lot of the kids are surviving.
No, definitely. But I mean,
So they're gonna say don't go to Cuba because you're HIV positive because you got it from your mom.
unfortunately, I guess it's ways.
Or they'll
of
take a
them-
chronic illness like hypertension. Okay, not hypertension. Like how can you have it?
How
Like
can-
maybe another maybe like an autoimmune condition because it's our problem.
and communicable diseases. Like, listen, if you've left Cuba, when you come back, you know this COVID quarantine thing? Cuba has been quarantining since the end of time,
Even way before.
even way before. So it's usually 12 days.
So
If
even
you're
when you
coming
got
into
there,
Cuba.
you would do that whole quarantine.
Yes. So we're from Africa.
They're
For
thinking
instance,
whatever
there's
it is.
TB, malaria.
Fit. We
So-
have those things, but really, is it that bad?
But I mean, they don't want it. What are they going to do with it?
Ah.
They don't have much. They're busy fighting with the USA.
So,
So
they don't
they
want to deal
do-
with any form of fever.
They do have, like, because it's a tropical thing, so they have things like dengue, Zika, but they have those type of things. So already they
Have problems.
they're doing something, So if they can prevent it,
Sure.
why not? That's the entire system of Cuba is preventative. It really is. It's
And primary care.
there's always people moving in and out of their country, so they're very strict when it comes to that.
How many medical schools are there? I hear it's one of the
I'd
most
be lying.
saturated. I'll Google it.
I'd
But
be
I know
lying.
Cuba has the most number
It
of
does.
medical schools.
It does, because like for instance we're in Havana,
Mhm.
so there's the University of Medical Sciences. The University of Medical Sciences of Havana has different faculties. Your faculties will be your medical schools. So there's about 8 in Havana.
Eight medical schools.
In Havana.
Imagine 8 medical schools in Johannesburg. There's literally one now. Then there's Pretoria, of course. Then there's like 2 in Gauteng. Oh, and what's it, Medunza?
Yes.
So like 3.
Yeah.
But the whole of SA has literally like, what's it, UCT, roads, doesn't
No.
have.
So it's Wusu, here we have
Stellenbosch.
Stellenbosch, UCT, you have UOFS, UKZN,
So it's like
and
9.
then the 3, it's 8, but now there's also Limpopo,
9.
and also Nelson
They're
Mandela.
trying to open one. So they're trying to make like 10.
10, essentially.
It's nothing.
No, it is
It's
really
nothing compared to Cuba.
So that's why I think that's
absolutely
also why
nothing.
Cuba is able to
Make money off of other countries.
exactly, and Cuba has no foreign doctor working there.
So they obviously they have so many of their people working there to begin with.
Exactly, and they train people. So why would they want somebody
Else.
from outside to
No,
come in?
it won't.
They have enough to a point where they send. So usually the countries that they have relations with, like for instance South Africa sends
They
students
did.
study there, and then
They send
qualified
Cubans.
doctors come to South
South
Africa
Africa.
to work. So I think that's basically one of the things that keep the economy of Cuba
Running.
going. Yes, and also the tourism, of course.
Okay.
Yeah.
Is there racism there?
A lot. They're very racist. And it's kind of appalling coming from somewhere where racism is called out, coming from South Africa, where racism is called out, and then you get to a place like Cuba and you see how overt it is, and it's okay.
Are they racist?
Like your blood boils at the idea of racism, and for them it's just like, okay, it is what it is. They're very honest. So even their racism, it's never subtle. Like, I'm telling you this, do what you can with it, and I move on. They still have that mentality that they're superior somehow, but it's a matter of it's all in your head now, because I mean,
Financially.
reality is, it's speaking something different, and then you get to see that even the black people, the oppressed, are now like they can't stand for themselves. The minute this person is going to say, no, you don't deserve this, blah 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 blah, blah, they quickly, yeah. So those are the type of things that will make your blood boil, because you're like, how dare you? And for them, it's what they've been living with for this entire time. So they'll be just like, okay, it's not mine, it's not my place. Continue do what you're doing, and then I'll move back. They quick to that. Yeah.
Guys, that's a lot.
No, it's a lot. Because I always say, for me, yes, in Cuba I learned medicine, but I feel like medicine for me was collateral. I learned a whole lot more. Cuba taught me about life. It taught me about life, and obviously the lessons at the time were not pleasant. It's the times when you sit down and you look back and you're like, y'all have no idea what we had to put up with, And I find the best words to describe it. I have a friend of mine, when I came back, having to go back to Cuba, was like, oh, you're going back to exile. I'm like, girl, that's actually so true.
Sure.
But I'm not going to say that, because I mean, everybody's happy that you're studying, you're going to become this person. But when you think about what's waiting you back there, and you're just like, I'm really actually in exile.
You have to
I'm
actually
at
really
war.
want it.
And you're like, I'm at war, hey?
You have to actually really want it for you
No,
to
you
stay.
have to actually want it. You have to
Otherwise you
actually-
quit, you
because
come back.
because I mean I think it's really not worth it, you know, because I feel like other people confuse it with saying, oh, it's gonna be overseas, you're gonna have
You
an
take a
international
flight,
degree.
you have a passport, you
Yeah,
have an
yeah,
international degree,
If you're going for that, please don't.
because you won't survive.
You won't survive. Like I mean, it's not worth it. It has to be something you're really passionate about.